What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another UFC video. Episode 7 of the Contender series just finished up, and we're going to recap all of the fights that went down for episode 7. Now, make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and drop a comment down below with your thoughts on episode 7 as a whole. Now, we ended up going 2-3 on picks, which obviously is absolutely disgusting. It was tied for our worst episode of season 8, and honestly I have no excuses this time. Last time we went 2-3, it's because there was a lack of fight tape on a lot of the fighters during that episode. But honestly, this week I did poorly. I had enough fight tape to watch for most of these fighters, or for all these fighters. I made my decisions and we were on the wrong end for 3 out of the 5. So it's going to happen. Unfortunately, it happened for episode 7. Hopefully, we can have a bounce back week next week. But we are coming off of some pretty good episodes prior to this one. Regardless, episode 7 was atrocious in terms of our predictions. But it's all good. It's going to happen. Let's start off the night with Rose Conceição versus Alexia Tainara. Now, we had Rose to get this done. Unfortunately, she was defeated by a 30-27 unanimous decision across all 3 judges' scorecards. And honestly, Conceição did not come to fight. We knew Alexia was going to be the more active, the more explosive and quicker fighter. And I genuinely thought that the counter-striking of Conceição was going to help her. And although she was a 7-time wrestling Brazilian national champion, she did not attempt a single takedown. She caught a kick twice throughout the 15 minutes of her fight with Tainara and was not even close to getting a takedown. Actually, Tainara was the one that was able to solidify a few takedowns and do some work on the mat. Not that she did much offense on the mat. Most of it came on the feet. And Conceição was just too complacent with keeping her back up against the cage, trying to find her timing with the counter strikes. But Alexia did a fantastic job with her speed. She did a fantastic job with her pressure, and the leg kicks were fantastic for her as well. She landed over 40 leg kicks, I believe, throughout this fight, and that might have played a factor in how Conceição was performing. But I expected her to at least mix in some of her wrestling. I thought the counter-striking was going to be good for her, considering that's where she finds most of her success on the feet, but she had trouble finding her timing against Tainara. Conceição was able to land some strikes, but nothing of complete significance. Tainara was landing better more often, mixing in the martial arts as well, and she came to scrap, and Conceição, unfortunately for us, did not. But Alexia ended up getting a contract as well, because she was pushing the pace the entire time. It was a great fight. Alexia it can make some noise in the strawweight division, especially at her age at 26. I think she can. There's going to be some fun matchups for her, but for us, unfortunately, Rose did not get it done. Let's move on to the next fight: Kevin Vallejos versus Cameron Teague. Now, this was my most confident pick on the card, and it ended up cashing for us, thankfully. We also had Kevin Vallejos by knockout, and it ended up, that's exactly how it played out. When we were breaking down this fight, I understand Cam Teague is an absolute dog. The guy is durable. He's tough, and he has been able to make a career out of it. He was 7-0 prior to this fight, and he basically just takes a shot to give one, and he's okay with it. He uses his length and his height to kind of just piece up his opponents. Unfortunately for him, Vallejos is not the kind of guy that you can fight like that against. Cam Teague did exactly what he usually does. It's just in the face, constant volume, constant pressure, but he's just a walking punching bag. Vallejos was quickly in that first round able to find his timing. Cam was able to apply that pressure and back Vallejos up throughout this short fight. But Vallejos, he's just a fantastic fighter. I'm super excited to see him in the UFC. He ended up hurting Cam Teague to the body during one of the exchanges, and then he just pushed the pace. He continued applying the pressure, attacking the body, attacking the head, and Dana White in the post-event when he was giving out the contract, he mentioned that he had the producers go back and check the combination that Vallejos finished the fight with, and it was a 20-punch combination. So that obviously is a testament to Cam's durability, but Vallejos is going to be a problem. This guy fights like a veteran at the age of 22. He's got the skills. He is a little bit smaller for the division, but we saw somebody like Alexander Volkanovski. I'm not comparing the two, all right? So relax. I'm just saying somebody like Volkanovski that is arguably one of the best featherweights in the UFC history isn't exactly the biggest guy either, and he was able to find success through developing his skills and just favoring the things that go well for him. And somebody like Vallejos, honestly, at this age, he's going to continue getting better. So I'm really excited to see him back on the Contender Series, but finally get that contract. He ends up putting Cam Teague away by TKO in the first round. I didn't think it was going to be that early, but I did expect Vallejos to get this done by KO as well. So good for him. I'm super excited about the outcome of this fight. I'm excited to see him in the UFC. Hopefully he gets his debut sooner rather than later. This guy is such a G. He goes on Twitter, sees all the stuff about Evloev not finding an opponent, and he tweets out, when I get my contract on Tuesday night, we're going to get the UFC to book me against Evloev. And what an absolute G. Let's move on from this fight. We're going on to a light heavyweight bout. Francesco Mazzio against Kevin Christian. Now, this fight was atrocious. Terrible fight. Both of these guys were supposed to come in and just absolutely bang, throw heavily, and try to put each other away. Instead, what happened was Mazzio ended up getting a takedown in the first round, and Kevin Christian was okay with just sitting having Mazzio in his guard and just throwing up triangles, arm bars, and he was okay with it. Mazzio here and there landed some ground and pound, but nothing of true significance. Kevin Christian was actually able to cut open Mazzio with a strike from bottom, and Mazzio was dripping blood, all this stuff, but there was nothing exciting about this fight. They were both extremely gassed in the second round. Kevin Christian was literally just standing there waiting for Mazzio to make a move in that second round. Extremely flat-footed. I'm not trying to shit on these guys, but they are not UFC level whatsoever. Mazzio at least was able to find control on the mat, stay safe in that first round from any submission threat, and still work to try to get some damage off in the ground and pound. But in that second round, both of these guys, like I said, were extremely gassed out. Kevin Christian gets taken down, and the only threat that Mazzio had to worry about at that stage of the fight, because Kevin Christian was extremely exhausted and probably had no power left in any of his limbs, was not to get trapped in a submission. And what happens? Mazzio takes him down, takes a second to get a breather because he is also gassed out, and he gets triangle choked. It was an embarrassing performance on both parts, and Dana White, I don't know why the UFC matchmakers do this, but apparently Mick Maynard said, we have to have this guy in the UFC, give him a contract, because Dana was on the fence about it. And unfortunately, a terrible performance of Kevin Christian gets him a contract. Now, I'm not one to hate, because I understand the finishes are impressive, all stuff. This fight, I urge you guys to watch if you didn't already, and tell me you think Kevin Christian deserves a contract. There has been multiple people who have come in and dominated the fight, but because they weren't looking to finish the fight, they didn't get a contract. But they are more UFC ready by a mile than Kevin Christian is. One that sticks to the top of my head is Torres Finney. This guy last season finished his opponent in the second round, didn't get a contract. Comes in this time, fights a very lengthy fighter, and he's a pretty small dude for the weight class that he fights in. I think it might be middleweight. Anyway, he dominates the fight basically over 3 rounds, doesn't get a contract, and now he's going to have to fight for a third time on one of these future episodes in Season 8, I believe. I see him tweeting about it all the time. So we're going to see, but people like that are forced to fight multiple times on the Contender Series. But people like Kevin Christian, who looks sloppy, not UFC level, just an atrocious fighter, gets a contract. It's just absolutely ridiculous. I hate the inconsistency in terms of contract giving. I wish there was more of a like blueprint on what, like, I understand if you come in and just absolutely dominate and get a finish, then you're probably going to get a contract. But there should be a line between something like a Kevin Vallejos finish that we saw and something like just a sloppy mess that Kevin Christian ended up pulling off. So I'm done with my rant. We ended up getting this one wrong. I thought Mazzio's power and was going to be the difference. I didn't expect him to get submitted by the 35th attempt at a triangle. Regardless, let's move on to the co-main event. It was Daniel Frunze going up against Vadim Kutsi. Now, this fight, we picked the underdog in Daniel Frunze, and this is actually one of the fights that I was worried about. I wasn't really worried about the Rose Conceição fight. Kevin Vallejos was my most confident pick, so I wasn't stressed about that fight at all. And the previous fight in Francesco Mazzio, I honestly had more confidence in him than I did in Daniel Frunze. But here we are. Daniel Frunze ends up putting Vadim away in the second round of that fight. And this was actually a beautiful breakdown on my part. I don't know the exact wordage that I used in my breakdown, but basically what I had seen from the fight tape on both of these guys was Daniel Frunze is not the better fighter technically or just like overall in this specific matchup, but the guy is tough. He's a dog. He has lots of pressure, and he doesn't give up. And that's one thing that I was favoring in this specific matchup, because despite being 17-1, which is extremely impressive, okay, Vadim hadn't fought in 2 years. In his fights I watched, he was a dominant grappler and wrestler, and I knew that Frunze struggled in that department. But Vadim, after the first 5, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, gasses next level. Okay, and although Frunze landed some big shots in that first round, he had one early before he ended up getting dropped. He had one late in that round as well, and he got controlled multiple times. He got, I think, taken down twice in the first. He also was a victim to some brutal ground and pound on the Vadim side. But the way I saw it when I broke down these two fighters and watched their fight tape was that Vadim was going to find success early and then completely gas out, and the dog was going to come out of Frunze, that pressure, and he was going to eventually put Vadim away. I'm pretty sure I have it in my book, Frunze by KO, and I'm not trying to toot my horn here because I went 2-3 this episode, which is obviously terrible, but I like when I watch fight tape and I can break down and what I expect to happen or what I see from the two actually does happen. I got to pull some positive out of this atrocious episode, okay? Cut me some slack here. But Frunze ended up weathering that early storm, landed some decent shots on in his own right in that first round. And although he was controlled on the mat, he was victim to some big shots as well. He didn't let that deter him. He came out in the second round. Vadim was still dangerous because the guy's a strong dude. You know, those eastern part of the world, like in the former Soviet republics, you know that they're taking their vitamins. Tough dude. He's swinging heavy. Still had a lot of power in his hands, so Frunze did have to worry about it. But Vadim just gassed out completely and could not continue. And Frunze ended up putting him away in that second round. So fantastic for him. He's a tough guy. He's a dog. He's going to bring those fun, entertaining fights to the UFC. So I'm happy he got this done. He ended up getting the contract as well. So I was going to be pissed if Kevin Christian ended up with a contract and Frunze didn't. All right. Fantastic win for him. Let's move on to the main event of the evening. Bailey Schoenfelder against Danilo Voivodkin. The biggest favorite on the card, -800. Bailey Schoenfelder was my second most confident pick because Danilo fought absolute scrubs in his 6-fight career so far. And I actually thought that Bailey would get this done because he has some good MMA skills, and Danilo hasn't shown his complete overall game yet, but his kickboxing is fantastic. He ended up immediately came out, applied the pressure, was in Bailey's face. He was the one landing the more significant shots. I don't think Schoenfelder even landed anything clean on Danilo. This fight didn't last very long, but a 1-2, I think it was a straight right and then a left hook, put Schoenfelder down, dropped him. He was like KO'd and woke up when he hit the ground. And instead of Danilo, this is the impressive part for a former kickboxer, instead of following him to the ground and just continuously ground and pounding him, trying to get him out of there or get the ref to step in. The moment Schoenfelder turned onto his exposed his back, Danilo didn't have any of his hooks in with his legs. He grabbed a rear naked choke and just squeezed and ended up getting Schoenfelder to tap. That was an extremely impressive performance on the Voivodkin side, especially having a kickboxing background. I thought Schoenfelder was going to be able to hang on the feet, eventually get the fight to the ground and implement his ground and pound, which he does very well, and he's shown in his short MMA career so far that he's able to do, but unfortunately didn't get past the first brutal, first clean shots that Danilo had. And I know heavyweight play works out like this most of the time because they're big boys, they hold power, and good for Danilo, man. This guy was an 8-1 underdog or whatever it was, I think. And he came in and looked like he should have been the minus 800 favorite. This is one of the, for the other fights, I understood that there was a risk. And there other than Kevin Vallejos, like I mentioned, I understood that there were close matchups. The Rose Conceição fight, when I was breaking it down, I didn't think Tenaro was going to be that much better, but she proved that. And with Kevin Vallejos, I knew that was going to happen. Daniel Frunza, there was that storm that he had to weather early. I knew that was also a tricky pick. Mazio, 4-0, he's not that good of a fighter, but I didn't think Kevin Christian was either, and I was just on the wrong end of the bad fighters in that one. But this was an actual shock to me. Danilo did a fantastic job. He actually looks like a pretty exciting fighter as well, with lots of power, so I'm not too butthurt about this one. I think Danilo's going to be good for the UFC. The heavyweight division is quite limited in terms of skill level, especially in the lower heavyweights. So it's going to be nice to see somebody like Danilo make it to the UFC. Obviously, he got a contract as well. So that's the whole recap, guys. It was actually a pretty decent episode, minus the third fight. It was actually really shit. Anyway, yeah, there we go. So 2 and 3. I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board in terms of the Contender Series, but for right now, I have to focus on breaking down UFC Paris, which I will be hopefully posting tomorrow. I have a lot of work to do for that video, but I'm going to go there. We're going to watch those, hopefully absolutely kill it. I'm going to make the recap for that, and then come back for Episode 8 with a vengeance and get another 5-0 sweep for Season 8. So thank you guys so much for watching another video. I'll see you in the next one. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and drop a comment down below on how you did or what your thoughts on Episode 7 were. Peace out.